Hello, I'm Mr. Maple, and this is the review of the Week 4 match that I had against Obito of Team X as a part of War League. We began War League on a 10 full 10 match skid, and then we finally managed to right the ship in Week 3 and actually managed to get a win. And this was us trying to keep that momentum going, but when this particular match began, it seemed to go a bit worse. We were 1-2 in this particular war against Team X. Uh, Yamero played soon after pairings were posted, and he lost. Snack, I believe, played the day I played this match, went in, got a clean 2-0 win, and then Fitz, the way he says it, he got completely sacked. He was actually lamenting how he didn't really think he had a very interesting video to talk about this week, so perhaps this can fix that for him. So we're down 1-2 in matches going into this, and I was well aware of that because Fitz's match ended about 4 or 5 hours before mine did. So the first thing I want to do is properly go first because I knew Obito would be likely playing Blackwings, and so I played Diva Hero Beat expecting a Blackwing matchup against his team, and I do manage to get the first to go. So I look at the hand, and you don't have any hero access, which is always a pain to start with. So the line I see is Future Fusion to get Stratos engrave, and then reviving it with Call of the Haunted, with the caveat that I am in for a rough time if he has MST. I'm not that scared of DD Crow because it seems like a very aggressive call out in game 1 to main deck that card. It's mainly MST, but if it's a one-of card, then it's a one-of card. You could argue that it's better for me to flip it immediately, but I think it's better to save it because I've already accepted that this loses to MST, and there's not really a whole lot that he can do in this particular instance because even if he's playing something odd like Breaker, he just normal summons that and I chain the Call of the Haunted and get the search anyway. So he normal summons the Kalute and attacks, and here's where I flip it up just to deny him the damage. Because this thing's going to be on the field anyway. There's no point in taking pointless damage. And then he does the Blackwing play of setting some nice purple cards. So I of course expect at least one of these to be an Icarus. And I don't want to lose completely to that. But I do have the Spark to insulate some of the more disastrous plays. Like Torrential is probably a decent activation here, but I can simply Spark the other set. The main part of this match is me playing around Icarus in spots where I was told it was perhaps not exactly great to do so. So he does go for the Icarus, targeting both the back row. I was thinking about a Spark, but decided it wasn't really worth it that much. Alias is still fine. So Torrential to destroy the other cards that he decides to bring out if he wants to push really hard into this. And he expects me to have back row stops or Honest or Spark or something, which is the safer play. And this starts this incidence of us just playing grab ass with a bunch of these set cards trying to provoke the other into doing something stupid. Because at the moment, I have this image of Icarus attack burned into my head, and I really don't want to lose a bunch of cards to it. But I've looked at this replay more than once since the match ended, and I don't think it's that annoying for me to get Icarus, because you likely pick 2 back row here, because picking the Alias forces out a Spark that you have to assume I have, given I'm setting 4 here. But the issue is that I don't have a way to beat over this Sirocco yet. So I'm also trying to use the fact I may or may not have Honest as a weapon, but don't want to attack into him and get deprisoned. But maybe that's not even part of his calculation, because if he's scared of Honest, he has Blizzard Revive Collude. So he's not super incentivized into attacking into my alias, and I don't want to waste a spark just to out a single Sirocco when I also have 3 back row that could be anything. He's going to go for an MST in the end phase, just going fishing. It's a nice one. It's the Mirror Force. It's not the end of the world, but I certainly would have liked to keep it in hand, or keep it on the field rather. We draw the second spark, which does change the math a bit, because it means I can spark something and then blast Alias back to my hand, perhaps destroying something else along with it, and spark again. Lady makes him try to do something in my view, because the second spark, as well as having the blast, makes even this not that scary to me. So I spark, targeting the other back row, because even here I'm not that concerned about the Sirocco, because he either pushes into it and gets torrentialed, or he simply attacks me for 2k, and I get back the alias and have other cards, plus the Miracle Fusions waiting in the wings I already have prepared. He's going to go for a Solemn on the Spark, which seemed a bit odd in the moment. I don't really know if the extra draw is that important that you want to Solemn it, because this does put you really, really low. Because if I do draw Miracle Fusion, which, looking at his hand, he doesn't really have much of a stop for, he is going to take a lot of damage, as well as this Sirocco is going to be off the field soon. We go for the... Don't bother setting the Spark. Doesn't really do a whole lot in this particular instance. He's going to go for the Allure Banish, the Blizzard. Perhaps he was hoping for some better draws there. Although Whirlwind is a nice one. There's a couple things we could do here. But given the Torrential, I think I still value just playing passively. Because if he tries to push into anything dangerous, I can just wipe his whole board. He's going to Yada for another card. And he's not going to try to press into anything, because with 4 back row that he hasn't really tested for things like Dust or Bottomless. It really could be anything. He probably doesn't want to lose to that, plus whatever backup I have. This one is the first odd play for me, because in my head, I have the Spark set, so I'm fine using the Blast for less than its ideal value, because I am getting low, and if this continues, he will just kill me with the Sirocco. But, maybe you could say that I could last another turn. I could play it more patiently than I thought I was at the time. Because we do get to draw the card that he's afraid of at this point. So we normal summon the Alias, test for Bottomless. Probably not Torrential, though, because you want to save Torrential for this card here. So you don't have a 2500 body on field. He's going to think about it, because he does have it set. He's probably afraid of Starlight Road. He lets it go through. And it's left at 650. At this point, I'm feeling pretty confident regardless of what he does. The Mirror Force is already accounted for. There's not really a whole lot in his deck that I'm terribly scared of because he doesn't have Dad yet. I guess Blizzard Dad would be a bit of a concern, but we do have the Spark in case he does go that route. So I do decide to go for the Spark, but I target the Whirlwind, which I'm not entirely sure in retrospect is the correct choice. At the moment, I thought he's going to revive Kalut and then sync off for a thing, and then he's going to have Dad live, but it's just me misapplying how Blizzard's effect works, because if it's destroyed, the Kalut still comes back. I think it's just a moment of me trying to play more supposedly intelligently than I really need to in the moment. And here he's just thinking about whether or not he wants to Torrential, I guess, to get rid of the Ab-Zero while he's not under the threat of getting Starlighted out of this game. So he goes into Catastor, and I think about whether or not I want a Torrential here, and decide not to because I don't have any pressure. And now with another monster in hand, Heavy Storm can win us the game. Because this into anything at all is the end of game one. So you're always going to feel nice about winning game one, especially when it's the one where you went first. You're supposed to win those games, at least as far as the conventional wisdom goes. And it was nice to be able to capitalize on that initial chance. This hand is also looking really nice. I mean, of course, you always want bottomless or Starlight and be able to set up before your opponent gets to do anything, but Lady and Alias plus an Honest is always going to be a really good option, because I mentioned a couple times already, and then I'll mention it later, how I play around Icarus far more than I should, but Hero Beat kind of naturally plays around Icarus when it comes to going second, because the plan is usually to normal summon a single monster and then attack. And if the monster attack succeeds, then they don't have the Winged Beast anymore, and if it doesn't, then you don't have anything on your field to Icarus. So the single set could honestly be anything. I don't feel a need to be too conservative, so I can just go in and attack. I go for the 2 sets, which I felt pretty comfortable with, because I don't want to hyperextend into heavy, and also I know he's going to be bringing in Dust Tornadoes, because I looked at his replays, he's a good enough player to know that you should be bringing in Dust Tornado against the trap-heavy decks that you know you're going to be playing against, when people can see the kinds of decks that you play, and not completely pre-for you, because we don't know who we're playing against, but we can have a pretty decent idea and know what the team's range is. And since Obito had been a player every single week and had been playing Blackwing every single week, then Diva Hero Beat became a consideration. Gets the Starlight, which is annoying. And then he uses the effect to set a card. And then, in his standby phase, or main phase rather, dusts the other one, so now I don't have any protection from this Sirocco Whirlwind play. I'm not that upset about it as I was about other times it happened to us, because there was interaction there. It wasn't just going second, summon Sirocco, activate Whirlwind, get 30 million cards in hand every time. But this is going to be the beginning of a couple other misplays I make. So Dark End outs the Lady without him having to lose a whole bunch of advantage, and will likely have a chance of Dad as soon as this card gets off the field. Thinks about what other cards he wants to set, and decides not to. So, traditionally, Hero Blast indicates that I now win this exchange, because I can summon Alias, set the Hero Blast, and then pass. If he attacks into the alias, I have Honest, and I've outed the Dark End Dragon. If he sinks his attack to get rid of the alias, I can then activate Hero Blast, because Dark End's now at 16 and is killed by the blast. But at this point, I'm thinking about these combos that probably shouldn't even be entering my head. These 3 or 4 card combos that lose me the game immediately. Just a lesson that I need to learn of. If he has it, he has it. So instead of doing the smart thing, I instead normal summon the alias and set those cards humming and hawing about what to do and just attack into the Dark End to use the Honest there, which is honestly not defensible in the least. It's better to play patiently there and force him to choose how he wants to out the alias, and then get told why he cannot out the alias at all. Kalut's going to get a Blizzard to hand, unless I decide to Torrential here, which I do, actually. It's nice, lets me get the alias back with the Hero Blast. The pressure's off at this point. I have the set cards that let me to sit around and wait for him to do something. He's going to target the Kalut in hopes of making probably an android. But I can keep him from getting the Vayu to hand. His Vayu is concerning. He has a Sirocco in hand, and I don't want to let him get a whole bunch of big bodies on field, considering I don't really have a lot of cards left, even if the life points are kind of okay. So here I decide to get back the alias and kill the tuner. So from here I feel like I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And then here's the second misplay. The ideal here would be to simply normal summon the alias and beat the Kalut and just have this one guy on field and force him to out it. Because if I normal summon the Stratos, I reveal more information about my hand. But at this point, I think that maybe one of these two is a summon stop or a deep prison or something, and I want this Stratos to get the advantage now. So now he knows my entire hand, which is a bit of an annoying place to be in when you're essentially in the middle of a top deck war. Now he wants to hedge his odds a little bit here, and considering his life points, wants to compost the Kalut back to hand, which lets me attack him directly to redeclare because the Kalut left his field, but also gives him the ability to beat over my Stratos if he draws something that doesn't quite have the muscle to get over him. Just gets more cards. Here, given the circumstances, just a simple attack into the thing. He thinks about, probably Yada to see if he can, luck his way into another Kalut. But Blizzard is also a pretty nice draw for him, as is Oppression. So he summons the Blizzard, and this is probably the worst misplay he makes in this match, because with the Cyber Dragon in hand, of course I'm thinking, please go into Catastor, please go into Catastor, because with the Royal Oppression behind you, I think it's far preferable if you go into the Android, because you get the gradual life gain, and you also get a monster that I can't simply beat over with the Cyber Dragon. The Oppression stops the Cyber Dragon, but I have the MST taken care of. It just feels like you open yourself up to a lot more things that you lose to if you go into the Catastor. Because Oppression also stops the Miracle Fusion. If I'm playing like some other tuner aside from Diva, it stops that. Of course, it also stops the Diva. It just opens this hole into your whole strategy that I don't really think you ought to be playing with if you're at 1600 life after the resolution of the Oppression. It also doesn't do any damage if I'm summoning monsters. So here I normal summon, special summon the Sidra, half expecting something like this to happen, but if it works, I have a 2K beater on my field that he will not be able to out at all. Because even Sirocco would crash. But he does have the oppression, but even then I'm not that concerned about it. However, I top his misplay with an even worse misplay of my own. As you can see, I think about it for a time, and I normal Ocean and set the Deep Prison, which doesn't go too well for me. But the idea was he has the oppression up, so if he draws a Gale or something else, then I can oppression whatever play he goes into. Because with 1600 life, he only has one more activation, but I have like 6 more. And I also wanted to summon the Ocean, because if he's on field at my standby phase, I get to bring back the Stratos and keep adding cards back to my hand. I was aware of Icarus attack, because it had stayed face down for so long, it had to be something. But I thought maybe he doesn't have it in hand because he's normal summoned a fair amount. He's just drawing trap cards, and I just need him to whiff one draw or be forced to attack. And I get exactly what I deserve. He manages to draw the... Sure, although he does set it, I'm not certain exactly what it is he's setting it for. Perhaps a force of habit, because bottomless, he can still just chain the Icarus. He's concerned about like weird super poly shenanigans. There's no need to be worried, because Escuri Dao certainly isn't in the format. Though would be a really sick play. If only. Hero Beat needs to be better. That's the lesson I've come up with. So Icarus is the 2 cards away. And now I have to deal with a 2200 attack point monster. So I have a bottomless that's likely not going to factor into this game, and I have no choice but to set both. This is also a position where I can't even rely on my good cards to help me out here. Because the oppression he only has 1 activation of oppression left, but in the situation I'm in, 1 activation's enough. So Icarus is targeting Alias and the oppression, which sets up the other half of the Vayu. And I see that, and I admonish myself in chat for missing what in hindsight seems obvious, but in the moment seemed like I was playing very patient. But I had a tendency of confusing playing patient with playing very bad. This is another really strong opening hand. In most other matchups, Diva can go into Catastor with a little bit of trepidation for Cyber Dragon, but the bottomless does insulate from that, but we don't go into Catastor here. We're just going into Android because passive life gain is decent enough, and the Honest also makes it so we always win battle. And this Android, by my recollection, does stick around for a decent amount of time. He's going to play more passively at this point. I'm not that concerned about Icarus here because I have a whole bunch of follow-up plays. And I do want to force him to do something. I don't consider this to be the main Android plus probably the Gilman that I end up summoning to be the main thrust of my offense. I'm going to be more concerned about making sure that the Alias or the Cyber Dragon sticks. So if even that gets mirror forced, I'm not too put out about it. So I go into the Gilman, and then he goes for the bottomless, which I'm not that concerned about either, because I already have the Diva resolved. I have my Grave full of waters. So here's just a matter of, do I want to set the Mirror Force? And I decide I do not, because I do not want to lose my other cards. And then he dusts the bottomless. which is probably what you expect in Game 3 anyway, just because of just how much back row removal both of us are siding into. So this is still not even that concerning for me, because if he goes into Goyo, I win combat with the Honest. If he goes into Brianak, he does get to set up one half of Vayu. And I don't even have to extend that far just by summoning Alias. Or even specialing the Cyber Dragon and just honesting over it. So I'm not feeling that bad about it. Perhaps Brianak might be better, because you force me to have an additional monster at this point that you do not know if whether or not I have. Also, if you expect the next monster to be, say, a Stratos or something. It's kind of one call or the other. Either way, you're losing a limited synchro monster that you want to keep in deck, if you consider that going bad for you. Kind of hard to say either way. I'm just going to sit around and take some damage for a second. I decided that this was... As he summons the Sirocco, and I think I need to find a way to either get rid of this and win, or get rid of this in a way that doesn't send it to grave, because I'm concerned about Dad. I don't know why I'm playing around Mirror Force here when I wasn't playing around it earlier. Maybe it's because I just lost the Honest, so I don't really have a reason to, expect everything to go through safely. It's not that honesting the Goyo was as bad as honesting the Dark End, because if I don't honest the Goyo, I lose this game a hell of a lot sooner. But I kind of second-guess my own choice to not hit in there, although you also could say I don't really have anything else to hit in with. You could also chalk it up to me wanting to play around Icarus Attack, but arguably Icarus Attack, not Icarus Attack itself, but playing around Icarus Attack lost me the whole match anyway. So I end up specialing the Cyber Dragon, not summoning any of the aliases, and then not even being able to... It's annoying, honestly, looking back, how little I play around the things I, in the moment, think I need to play around them or I lose. So he has a good long think about if he wants to Icarus Attack here. He decides that he'll take 100 damage. So, I just, again, in my mind, I need to whiff one draw, and I don't. Here's the father. He's been absent this match, but he comes home now. I think I have him beat with a Torrential, and now I don't. I honestly wasn't really expecting... Maybe I should have been. But I personally wasn't expecting my body in the moment. It's not like I'm going to hold it for another card, because it's Dad. He's going to wipe my board anyway. And at this point, I am just setting cards, trying to avoid losing. And the only thing I can try and hope and pray I find is a single copy of Miracle Fusion. Because Diva doesn't do it, because Catastor doesn't out Dad. Nothing else is going to do it, because he already popped the sweepers. You could argue this game was already lost, from the moment that he drew Dad, after he drew the my body to get it through whatever interruption I had next. Yep. It's harder to find a more optimal line in the game 3, aside from asking me to be more aggressive in general, but game 2 was certainly winnable. I could have, played differently, played around the cards I was afraid of in ways that actually mattered. I could have remembered that Dark End Dragon loses its attack. And I could also just blame the draw, so I don't really feel like doing that. The deck's well built enough. We had like 8 different people look at it and decide, yeah, the deck's good. Better to not blame the variables when you're not doing yourself any favors. I don't know when the next of these would be coming out because, again, the scheduling is kind of off in general. I don't know quite when I'd be able to make it back in, but I could make a relief video for Fitz because he said his video might not be that interesting. Good luck to Obito as well because I realized I forgot to wish him the rest. Give him the rest of the wish, or perhaps he left before I was able to finish it. I was a little bit peeved about the my body on the torrential, but honestly, I was mulling over the things I did in game 2. I felt that whatever happened in game 3 was whatever I deserved.